Sure. This debate is about war and U.S. interventionism, a topic that I can appreciate because most people only hear the pro-war propaganda of the government and their co-workers in the mainstream media, who all work for sociopathic billionaires that only care about lining their pockets. In 1898, the U.S. defeated Spain and seized Cuba, the Philippines, the Virgin Islands, Guam, and Puerto Rico, and proceeded to brutally colonize those places. Thus began the U.S. empire, which is not only composed of what we call U.S. territories, but also economic colonies where the U.S. props up right-wing regimes, drug lords, and strongmen, and other countries that allow the U.S. to maintain military bases essentially in exchange for aid money. The U.S. maintains over 800 military bases all over the world. In contrast to that, Russia maintains 20 bases outside of its borders, and China maintains 1. We spend more than the next 10 countries combined on the military. We have bases all around the borders of Russia, Iran, and China, and yet we pretend that those countries are the aggressors. And in the meantime, economic inequality has gotten worse and worse. Billionaires in the U.S. have increased their wealth by 54% just since the lockdown began in March 2020. A third of our country is uninsured or underinsured. 20 million Americans are facing eviction right now, and yet we pay for militaries in other countries like Israel and Colombia that spend their money on universal health care and education and things that their people need. War is a racket. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of Brigadier General Smedley Butler, who noted how impossible it would be for Russia or China to invade the United States due to the massive cost and all the enormous amount of soldiers and equipment that would have to be brought overseas. I'm not going to comment on nuclear war because if that happens, we all lose. The United States does not fight wars over ideology or to protect human rights, but to steal other countries' natural resources, usually oil, but it has been a number of resources, including zinc, copper, rubber, coffee, and even bananas. U.S. foreign policy is international piracy. Our government doesn't care about lives or human rights or even democracy. They care about the billions they can exploit, and in doing so, they also get cheap labor, both in those countries and in the waves of refugees that some would call immigrants that flee to the United States. In preparation for this debate, my opponent, who has been extremely gracious, sent me a list of 4 possible conditions to justify ignoring a country's sovereignty and coup their leaders. These are committing genocide against their own people, a track record of aggression towards regional countries, is a state sponsor of terror, or acquires chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons in violation of the Geneva Convention. I would posit that the U.S. meets 3 of those 4 conditions and is funding the 4th in Israel, which does meet all 4 conditions itself. U.S. imperialists have no business controlling who leads other countries. A better world is possible. And in a better world, leaders will serve the interests of their people, not people in the United States who invest in Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. Thank you.